Happy Tuesday! Hi, she's Sissy,
And she's Chrissy.
and we're Chrissy and Sissy. Welcome back, Chrissy and Sissy fam, to another Sunday school lesson as taught by Chrissy and Sissy. As always, we are excited to have you here, and we're looking forward to bringing the meat, should I say, out of this lesson. But before we jump into the lesson, please go ahead, if you have not done so, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. As always, don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you will know when Sissy and Sissy uploads another Sunday school lesson. Also, please follow us on all of our social media sites, which is at the bottom of the screen. We have Facebook, which is the same name, Chrissy and Sissy. We also have Instagram, which is Chrissy7Sissy, and of course Twitter at Chrissy7Sissy. Don't forget, as this lesson is being taught, please don't forget to like, comment, and share. We really and truly get excited when we see the thumbs up, and we love to read your comments. They are so encouraging. And please share this with a friend, a family member, or even a coworker. Thank you so much. This week we are in the book of Second Kings, and the title of our Sunday lesson is "A King Acts on a Widow's Behalf." So, take it away, sis.
All right, you guys. As the preacher say, I will not be before you all long. I'm serious. I will not be before you all long because I'm really excited for next week's lesson. But we need to go to Second Kings because last week we talked about, if I'm not mistaken, last week we talked about Solomon. So if you notice, we went from David to Solomon. Okay. Remember, after David's reign, Solomon's reign, the kingdom divided. So where here we are now in Second Kings. Second Kings, a king acts on a widow's behalf. Here we have in Second Kings, this is focused on the division or the history of the divided kingdoms. You got Israel, so we know Israelite. Jacob's name was changed. Israelites, he had 12 sons, 12 tribes of Israel, the Israelites. But now you have Judah, which was one of the tribes. So you have divided kingdoms now. All right. Still in our lesson, or I'm sorry, our quarter of justice. Okay. We did this. I always think about this because I always want to say prophets and justice, but we're in a quarter of justice. Okay. Because I remember 2 years back, if you was following us, you know, we did, or just in Sunday school, we had the big quarter on prophets and justice. But that was like March. It was spring quarter. All right. So, again, I will not be before you all long. Here we are talking about the Shunammite woman. Am I saying that right, sis? The Shunammite woman?
Yes, Shunammite.
Shunammite woman, okay? You know me, I want to say Shun. But the Shunammite woman, all right? What's interesting about the Shunammite woman, even though we're in 2 Kings 8, 1 through 6, it's important to go back and read like I just did. It's important to go back and look at 2 Kings 4 because here we are introduced to Elijah and the Shunammite woman. Here, this is where we get the description of her, right? Her story goes from 2 Kings 4 to 2 Kings 8. That's very important. Here we have the prophet Elijah. This is not about Elijah and Elijah, but wherever Elijah went, Elisha went. And I remember these were great prophets. You still hear me, sis? Okay, good. Because my other screen was like, eh. But here we have Elijah. A lot of people say, and this is not a lesson about Elijah and Elijah, but a lot of people say Elijah picked up where Elijah left out. Elijah was a great man of God. He was a prophet. Remember how we talked about prophets and how prophets were like, I'm not going to say the next best thing that's the sliced bread, but prophets could be revere as your man of God, your pastors today. Because these are the men, because you didn't have the Bible like we have it in our hand on paper, or in our hand on our phone, or in our hand on our iPad. They were just told through stories, and with the 12 tribes of Israel, what I always love bringing out, you had the tribe of Levi, the Levites, those were your priests. So you had specific people, as as we would call it today, the pastors, the one who performed the ceremony. Your pastor performs the baptism along with the deacons, but your pastor performs the marriage. Your pastor oversees the funeral. That's what pastor did. So here we have a prophet. What's so amazing, I'm going to bring out, because 2 Kings 4 is just as important as 2 Kings 8. Because here we have in 2 Kings 8, she's coming back and she's returning. And I know Power Living Culture Publishing House wants you to focus on restoration. But looking at why this woman was restored, what did she do? We know from the title saying she's a widow. All right. She was a widow. But in 2 Kings 4, we find out that she didn't have children. She was wealthy. She was married. She was a wealthy married woman. So you could say she had everything but a child. I know that this is different from Hannah that had Samuel and she cried, she was barren. This is even different from Sarah. Not Sarah. Yeah, Sarah, because her one was old. She didn't have Sarah didn't have Isaac yet. She did what her future granddaughter did. Jacob's wife Rachel slept with they had their men to sleep with the handmaid. They were asking for it. Slept with their handmaid and they bore children. But what was so interesting about this Shunammite woman, excuse me, you all, is that she was wealthy. She had. So, if you think about the tribe of Israel, they know the story because it's in the Bible. So we know the story was passed on that Abraham had no child. She could have easily, custom back then, passed off her husband, who was old at the time, on someone else. And I said, this is different from nowadays where, when women can't have children, the women's to blame, but sometimes it's the man to blame too. He was an older man, but she was wealthy. But even though this is where preachers, pastors bring out, people think just because they got money, they don't need God. Well, here's a great example of somebody who was very wealthy, but still sought God. Why? Because she built a room first. Let me put a one so y'all don't get confused. With the permission of her husband, built a room, made a room for Elijah because he was always traveling through there. So she served the man of God. She allowed the man of God to come in her house. However, Elijah asked his servant, what can I do to just bless this woman, because she done all this for me, which means she wasn't asking for it. She wasn't dropping hints. But it was said that she did not have a child. Elijah touched the woman. Go call her a woman of God. It says Elijah touched the woman of God. And she was able, prophesied, and she was able to, which just, could be constituted as touch, but prophesied that she would have a son by this time next year. That prophecy was fulfilled because this is Elijah, a true prophet of God, not one of the false prophets that be coming and be walking over the pews. However, several years later, her child became sick. But because you had a relationship with not just God, but the man of God, your child was restored. That's why I say go back and read 2 Kings 4. All right. So you have all this that has happened. This lady has stayed listen to her man of God, right? Because Elijah left and leave and come and go. But then in this time, you had a child. Years later, your child falls ill. Your child died in her lap. Child died. But Elijah, and I like this, he was, somebody preached about this, but Elijah walking back and forth through that time. That's why I say go back and read it. Elijah touched him a little. It says that his body grew warm At one touch came back, he was stretching himself upon him, and then the child had sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. So now we're in 2 Kings 8. A famine had came upon the land. Woman of God still listening to the man of God and leave and takes her family because there's a famine. But now in 2 Kings, she comes back and she asks the king, hey, I left. My land was taken. I want it back. When you have built, so what's the moral of this? When you have built a relationship with God, then you find yourself a church home. I'm throwing that in there. You find yourself to be submissive or under the man or woman of God, depending on what church you go to, and you listen to them. You are obedient when you go through your dry seasons, when you go through your hard times, and you don't give up and you don't walk away. I'm saying I'm clear this up right now because I could just feel people thinking when I go through hard times, my tests and trials, not when I'm being bullied and picked on. And I decide to, this not, I don't put up with it. I decide I'm talking about when you go through hard trials and this, God, this is only a test. This is only a test. So we have the woman of God comes back. When you do what you need to do, you can boldly ask. In my case, when I've done what I need to do, when I served in ministry, and when I go somewhere else and I ask something because I've been faithful to God, it's gonna happen. I know the culture lesson was talking about restoration, you being restored, but we need to talk about the importance, the obedience, because things are restored to people that are obedient. We talked about Jubilee, earlier in the month. We talked about, well, not early in the month, we talked about Jubilee in June. When you have done what you're supposed to do and have been in God's will, you can go boldly before the throne and act, or in this case, the physical throne. I think that's where people sometimes get that from. But just closing out, it's just that we will understand and work for justice in our own lives and the lives of others. Because this woman, think about this. This is why we learn customs. What was land back then? Land was equated to your wealth. When you had land and you had stock, and what was even better than that, your offspring. So yeah, she went back and got the land, not so that the Shunammite woman could have the land for herself, but this land was going to be passed down to her children. We can infer that, my people, my teachers that are watching, my school teachers, the people who love English, we can infer that this land was to be passed down. So sis, I just said, people that are restored are people that I believe once you're in the will of God, because even if you have sinned and backslide, once you get yourself right, God still got blessings for you. Even when you give your life to God and you haven't known Christ all your life, but you find him at 42 years old, like my dad, things are restored to you. This is what, because if you think about it, we were engrafted in, so we got restored. So that's what restoration, we know who the ultimate restorer is. Jesus. So yes, sis, go ahead. If you got something to say. I said I wasn't gonna be before y'all long. Got you. Go ahead, sis.
Awesome, sis. She broke it down. She kind of made me laugh talking about Sarah wound being old. But God is willing and able to even plant a seed in an old womb. That's what I got from that little comment right there. But anyway, just kind of going back to talking about restoration, the beginning of restoration, in order to be restored back to anything, I truly believe the first step to that is being obedient. Being obedient to the will of God. Being obedient. Sis said that. Being obedient. We as saints of God, and I'm going to, like she said, but I'm going to put it like this. We all have a history of obeying God, then we decide that we want to disobey God, then this we know what is right, but then this fly by night preacher or whatever comes to town, then all of a sudden he goes to talking about he talking about this idea or this thought that time that is in the Old Testament, and in the Old Testament the men had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wives, and you can do the same thing if you want to do it, and it's okay because it's in all of this stuff. So here we go. We want to follow the wrong teachings. Okay. We have a history of that. But even when we fall short, and when that light bulb finally comes on, and when we realize that we're living outside of the will of God, and we return back to Him, God is faithful and He is just. He is there for us, and He restores us back to our rightful place in Christ. We do not miss a beat. He loves us. He is still there. Okay, so restoration. God is there. Finding a, can I say, a pastor after God's own heart. This is where this comes into place, where it says, and God gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, some teachers, following the will of God, the word of God, learning and knowing what is right. And this is getting into next week's lesson. Please tune in to next week's lesson so that we can learn why it is important to follow the will of God and to do what we know is right. Tune in to next week.
All right, y'all heard it from her yourself. Tune in to next week's lesson. Everyone, we got to tune in. And on that note, if nothing else be said, this has been an awesome Sunday school lesson. Make sure you get into your Sunday school lesson so that you can learn and you can grow. Y'all may be thinking, how are they so knowledgeable about the Bible? It started in Sunday school. We wish you all a happy studying.